My parents spent thousands on my sister's birthday but said mine was too expensive. So I saved for a year and celebrated my 26th birthday in a suite. When my family saw the photos online, they freaked out. So I'm the older daughter in what everyone always called such a lovely family. My parents David and Linda and my younger sister Emma always seemed picture perfect from the outside. We lived in a nice suburban house, took family vacations, and my parents were involved in the community. But if you look closer, you'd see the truth that I lived with every single day. Emma was the golden child, and I was just the practice round. The birthday situation started when I turned 10 and Emma turned 6. That year, my parents threw Emma this elaborate princess party complete with a bouncy castle, professional face painting, and a magician. When my birthday came around 4 months later, I got a homemade cake and a gift card from Target. When I asked why Emma's party was so much bigger, my mother gave me the line that would haunt me for the next 16 years. "Sweetheart, we just can't afford to do expensive parties all the time." You understand, right? I was 8. I didn't understand, but I nodded anyway because that's what good girls do. The pattern continued year after year, and the excuses got more creative. Emma's parties got bigger, while mine got smaller. When she turned 10, they rented out the entire roller skating rink and hired a DJ. For my 12th birthday, we went to Applebee's with just the family. When I asked about having friends over, Dad said, "Deborah, you know money's tight right now, maybe next year." But somehow money was never tight when it came to Emma. By the time Emma was in high school, her birthday parties were legendary. I'm talking hired photographers, live bands, themed decorations that took days to set up, and guest lists that included half the school. For her 16th birthday, they threw her a Sweet 16 that cost more than most people's cars. There was a red carpet, professional DJ custom dress, and a highlight reel plate on screens throughout the venue. My 18th birthday dinner at Olive Garden and a cake from the grocery store bakery. When I asked if I could have a party too, Mom sighed and said, "Deborah, you're more mature than Emma. You don't need all that flashy stuff to feel special." I was starting to see the pattern, but I still held out hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd come through for me eventually. They never did. College came, and while Emma got her full tuition paid for plus a generous monthly allowance, I worked 3 part-time jobs and took out student loans. When I graduated some LA with a degree in computer science, they took us to dinner at the same Olive Garden. When Emma graduated 3 years later with a C average, they threw her a graduation party that rivaled most weddings. The final straw came last year on my 25th birthday. I had just gotten promoted to senior software engineer at a major tech company, making more money than I'd ever dreamed of. I was finally financially stable and thought maybe, just maybe, my parents might want to celebrate this milestone with me. I hinted for weeks about wanting to do something special. I even offered to pay for it myself if they just organized something. But when the day came, I got the usual dinner at a chain restaurant and a half-hearted happy birthday sung by a teenage server who clearly didn't want to be there. Meanwhile, Emma was already planning her 23rd birthday party for the following month. The theme was Emma Through the Ages, and they were creating displays for each year of her life. They hired a party planner, a catering company, and yes, another live band. The budget was more than my yearly rent. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom after my pathetic birthday dinner, I made a decision. Oh, I was done begging for scraps of attention. I was done pretending it didn't hurt, and I was done explaining to my parents why I deserved the same treatment as my sister. But first, I did something I'd never done before. I went through Emma's social media and really looked at the documentation of our childhood inequality. Photo after photo of elaborate birthday celebrations, each one more extravagant than the last. Professional photographers capturing her blowing out candles on custom cakes that probably cost more than my car payment. Videos of her dancing with friends at parties that look like wedding receptions. And then I scrolled through my own social media history. The difference was stark and heartbreaking. A few photos from those depressing family dinners. Me forcing a smile over grocery store cake. The most elaborate thing I'd ever posted for my birthday was a selfie with a cupcake I bought myself when I turned 23. I started doing research that night. How much had MS parties actually cost? I made spreadsheets because that's the kind of person I am. Conservative estimates based on venue rentals, catering costs, entertainment fees, and decorations. The numbers were staggering. Emma's Sweet 16 alone had cost approximately $8,000. Her 21st birthday party, the Emma Through the Ages theme, had cost nearly $12,000. In contrast, my parents had spent maybe $2,000 total on all 25 of my birthdays combined, and most of that was probably the Olive Garden bills. I calculated that over the years they'd spent roughly $60,000 celebrating Emma's life milestones while spending less than 5% of that celebrating mine. $60,000. I stared at that number on my laptop screen until my eyes burned. That was more than my student loans. That was a down payment on the house. That was a fortune spent on one daughter while the other got table scraps. The research phase became an obsession. I found myself staying up late diving deeper into the psychology of family favoritism, reading articles about the long-term effects of parental inequality on adult children. I learned terms like scapegoat child and golden child syndrome. I discovered that what I'd experienced had a name and that thousands of other people had lived through similar situations. I joined online support groups for people who had grown up in families with obvious favoritism. Reading their stories was both validating and devastating. There were so many of us, the overlooked ones, the mature ones, the ones who learned to expect less, because asking for more was labeled as selfish or dramatic. One woman in the group shared a story that hit particularly close to home. Her sister had received a new car for her 16th birthday while she got a used bicycle. When she pointed out the inequality, her parents said she should be grateful for anything and that her sister needed the car more because she was involved in more activities. The woman was 43 now and still dealing with the psychological impact of growing up feeling less valued. Another man wrote about how his brother's college graduation was celebrated with a big party and expensive gifts, while his own graduation went completely unacknowledged because his parents were too tired from planning his brother's celebration. He'd gone on to become a successful doctor, but he still struggled with feelings of inadequacy and a compulsive need to overachieve to get attention. These stories lit a fire in me. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't being dramatic, I wasn't too sensitive. I was responding normally to abnormal treatment, but instead of just feeling sorry for myself, I decided to channel that energy into something productive. I started planning my revenge, but not the destructive kind. The kind where you win by succeeding so spectacularly that everyone has to notice. I started planning. I opened a separate savings account that I nicknamed Operation Self-Worth in my head. Every dollar that went into that account was a dollar invested in finally treating myself the way I deserve to be treated. I set up automatic transfers and treated it like any other essential bill. The lifestyle changes were dramatic but oddly liberating. I canceled my Netflix subscription, stopped buying coffee, outstarted making all my meals at home, and declined every invitation that cost money. My coworkers started calling me a hermit, but I didn't care. Every sacrifice felt like a step toward freedom. I also started documenting everything not publicly. I didn't want to tip my hand, but privately. I kept a journal of every family interaction, every slight, every time my parents spent money on Emma while claiming they couldn't afford something for me. I photographed the receipts from my birthday dinners and saved screenshots of Emma's party planning posts. The documentation served two purposes. First, it kept me motivated when the saving got difficult. Second, it helped me realize just how pervasive the inequality had been. It wasn't just birthdays. It was graduation gifts, holiday presents, emergency financial help, and 1,000 tiny daily preferences that added up to a lifetime of feeling less important. During this planning phase, I also started setting boundaries that my family didn't understand. When Emma asked me to help with her party planning, I started saying no. When my parents asked me to contribute money toward Emma's gifts, I declined. When they expected me to drop everything to help with family crises that somehow always centered around Emma's needs, I wasn't available. "You've become so selfish lately," my mother said during one particularly tense family dinner 6 months into my saving plan. "Have I?" I asked, cutting my chicken with precise movements. "Or have I just stopped being automatically available for everyone else's priorities?" The table went quiet. Emma looked uncomfortable, probably sensing that something had shifted in the family dynamic, but not quite understanding what. "Deborah's going through something," my father said to my mother as if I wasn't sitting right there. "It's probably work stress." I looked up from my plate and smiled. "Actually, I've never been happier with my work. I got another promotion last month." This was true. My obsessive focus on saving money had translated into obsessive focus on advancing my career. I've been working harder than ever, taking on additional responsibilities and positioning myself for rapid promotions and salary increases. Every raise meant more money for Operation Self-Worth. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, but she sounded distracted. Emma had started talking about her upcoming party theme, and Mom's attention had already shifted back to the golden child. I excused myself early that night and went home to transfer my latest bonus into the Tokyo Fund. The balance was growing faster than I'd hoped, but not fast enough for my impatience. That's when I decided to get serious about side hustles. I started doing freelance web development projects in the evenings and weekends. I sold things I didn't need. I even picked up a part-time job teaching coding classes online. My schedule became ruthless, but every extra dollar felt like buying back my self-respect. The hardest part wasn't the lifestyle changes or the extra work. The hardest part was watching Emma's 23rd birthday party planning unfold, while I smiled and pretended everything was normal. The Emma Through the Ages theme required months of preparation. My parents spent weeks going through photo albums, creating displays for each year of Emma's life. They hired a professional videographer to create a highlight reel. They commissioned custom decorations and had a dress made for Emma that cost more than my monthly rent. I helped when asked because refusing would have raised suspicions. But inside, I was counting the cost of every detail and adding it to my mental tally of inequality. The flowers alone cost more than my parents had spent on my last 3 birthdays combined. The party itself was a production worthy of a Broadway show. The venue was a restored mansion with ballroom ceilings and crystal chandeliers. Professional photographers captured every moment. A string quartet played during cocktail hour, followed by a full live band for dancing. The catered dinner featured multiple courses prepared by a chef who worked at Michelin-starred restaurants. Emma looked like a princess in her custom dress, surrounded by friends and family who'd all dressed up for her special day. My parents gave speeches about how proud they were of her, how special she was, how much joy she'd brought to their lives. I sat at my assigned table, not the family table, because Emma's friends took priority, and watched the whole production with a mixture of sadness and determination. This was exactly what I'd always wanted. Not the specific details, but the feeling of being celebrated, of being the center of attention, for one day of having people make an effort to honor my existence. But as I watched Emma accept gift after expensive gift, I realized something important. I didn't want this exact party. I didn't want to be the center of a performance designed to impress other people. I wanted something that actually reflected who I was and what I valued. I wanted an adventure. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to experience something beautiful and meaningful, not just expensive and showy. That's when the Tokyo idea crystallized. Not just as revenge, but as the birthday celebration I actually wanted. Over the next year, I worked harder than I'd ever worked before. I took on freelance projects, optimized my investment portfolio, and saved every penny I could. I also started pulling away from my family. Not dramatically. I didn't want them to suspect anything. I just gradually became less available for family dinners, less responsive to group texts, and less interested in hearing about Emma's latest achievements or party plans. When they asked what was wrong, I just said I was busy with work. They seemed relieved, honestly. One less person they had to pretend to care about equally. Meanwhile, I was living like a monk. My coworkers joke that I never went out anymore, never bought anything fun, and seemed to have disappeared from social media entirely. They weren't wrong. Every dollar I didn't spend on going out every vacation day, I didn't use every bonus and raise, I received, it all went into my birthday fund. I researched everything meticulously. The best time to visit Tokyo, the nicest hotels, the most exclusive restaurants. I learned basic Japanese phrases and read every travel blog I could find. I booked a beautiful suite at the Park Hyatt Tokyo, not the penthouse, but a corner suite on the 40th floor with stunning city views. I managed to secure reservations at several high-end restaurants and planned experiences I dreamed about for years. The plan was simple. I would spend my 26th birthday in Tokyo, staying in a beautiful suite at the Park Hyatt, dining at incredible restaurants, and doing everything I'd ever dreamed of. But more importantly, I would document every moment and share it at exactly the right time for maximum impact. 3 weeks before my birthday, Emma started talking about her 22nd birthday party plans. This year's theme was Hollywood glamour. And yes, they were hiring another live band plus a string quartet for the cocktail hour. The venue was a historic mansion that costs more per night than most people make in a week. "Deborah, you'll help with setup, right?" Emma asked during Sunday dinner, not really asking. "Actually, I might not be available that weekend," I said casually, cutting into my mom's pot roast. The table went quiet. I never missed Emma's birthday parties. I was always there helping with setup, taking photos and cleaning up afterward while Emma held court like the princess she'd always been treated as. "What do you mean you might not be available?" Mom asked, her voice tight with that special tone she used when someone wasn't following the family script. "I might have work stuff," I lied smoothly. "Big project coming up." Dad frowned. "Can't you just tell them you have a family commitment?" I looked up from my plate and smiled. I did. My family commitment is to myself. The conversation moved on, but I caught the looks they exchanged. They weren't used to me having boundaries. 2 weeks before my birthday, I submitted my vacation request at work. 2 weeks in Japan, starting on my birthday, my manager, who knew about my family situation from years of watching me work through my birthday while everyone else took time off for their celebrations, approved it immediately. "You deserve this, Deborah," she said. "Take all the time you need." 1 week before my birthday, I started getting the usual questions about my birthday plans. Would I like to go to dinner somewhere? Olive Garden was mentioned because of course it was. Maybe see a movie afterward. "Actually, I think I'm going to do something different this year," I told them during our last family dinner before I left. "Different?" how Emma asked, looking up from her phone where she was probably planning more details for her upcoming extravaganza. "Just different," I said. "Nothing big." Mom looked relieved. "Good. You know how we feel about expensive celebrations?" I smiled. "Oh, I do. I absolutely do." The night before I left, I packed my bags with more excitement than I'd felt in years. I bought an entire new wardrobe for the trip, designer clothes I'd never allowed myself to buy before, jewelry that cost more than my parents spent on my last 5 birthdays combined, and luggage that looked like it belonged in first class because that's exactly where it was going. I left for the airport at 4 a.m., 3 hours before my family typically woke up. I told them I was going to spend my birthday weekend at a spa retreat, vague enough to be believable, specific enough that they wouldn't ask too many questions. The first-class lounge at LAX was everything I'd imagined. Unlimited champagne, gourmet food, and comfortable seating with a view of the runway. I took a selfie with my champagne flute raised toward the window and saved it for later. The flight to Tokyo was 13 hours of pure luxury. The first-class suite was like a private hotel room in the sky, complete with a bed that folded down from the wall and a personal flight attendant who remembered my name and drink preferences. I slept better on that plane than I had in months. I landed in Tokyo on my birthday morning, and the city welcomed me like I'd always belonged there. The transfer to the hotel was seamless, a private car that glided through the streets while I watched the city wake up outside my window. The Park Hyatt Tokyo is everything you see in the movies and more. My suite was on the 40th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the city, including Mount Fuji in the distance. The bathroom alone was bigger than my first apartment, with a soaking tub positioned perfectly to watch the sunset over Tokyo. I spent my actual birthday doing everything I dreamed of. I had breakfast in bed while watching the sunrise over the Imperial Palace. I got a massage at the hotel spa that cost more than my parents typically spent on my entire birthday celebration. I went shopping in Ginza and bought myself things I'd never allowed myself to want before. For lunch, I ate at Sushi Yoshiak, a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant that required months of advanced planning to get a reservation. The Yakuza meal was transcendent. Each piece of sushi, a small work of art. I savored every bite and thought about all the birthday dinners at chain restaurants while Emma got catered affairs. That afternoon, I visited temples and gardens, took a private tour of the city, and experienced Tokyo in a way that most tourists never get to see. Every moment felt like a small act of rebellion against years of being told I didn't deserve nice things. But the real magic happened that evening. I had dinner reservations at Narasawa, a 2 Michelin-starred restaurant that's nearly impossible to get into. The meal was poetry on a plate. Each course told a story about Japan's seasons and landscapes. I ate alone, but I didn't feel lonely. I felt powerful. After dinner, I returned to my suite and stepped out onto the private balcony. The view was breathtaking. Tokyo sprawled out below me in every direction. millions of lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Mount Fuji was silhouetted against the darkening sky, and the city hummed with energy even 40 floors below. I had never felt more alive. I took out my phone and carefully composed the photo. The view from the balcony with the Tokyo skyline spreading out infinitely in every direction. The city lights reflected off a glass of champagne in my hand. Dom Perignon, because why not? In the corner of the frame, you could just see the edge of the suite's marble table with a bottle in my room service dinner remnants. I wrote a simple caption. 26 never felt so good. Clinking glasses emoji Namar Tokyo views. Hard birthday tree penthouse life. Worth the wait. I posted it to Instagram at exactly 9 Hankwak Tokyo time, which was 8 a.m. back home in California. Perfect timing for when my family would be having their morning coffee and checking their phones before work. Then I put my phone on silent and went to soak in that incredible bathtub. When I finally checked my phone 2 hours later, it had exploded. 47 missed calls, 156 text messages, 89 Instagram notifications. I poured myself another glass of champagne and started reading. Emma had called me 12 times and left increasingly frantic voicemails. Deborah, where are you? Call me back right now. Mom and Dad are freaking out. How could you afford this? Did you steal money? This is so selfish. We had no idea where you were. My parents' messages were a mix of confusion, anger, and something that looked suspiciously like panic. Mom, Deborah, please call us. We're very worried. Dad, where are you? How did you pay for this? Mom, this is very irresponsible. We need to talk. Dad, are you in some kind of trouble? Did someone give you money? Mom? Emma is very upset. Her party planning is ruined because everyone is asking about your trip. And there it was. Even when I was living my best life on the other side of the world, somehow I was still responsible for Emma's happiness. But the Instagram comments were where the real drama was unfolding. My extended family, friends, and acquaintances from high school were all chiming in. Aunt Carol, wait. When did Deborah become rich? I thought she was the struggling one. Family friend Janet, is this the same Deborah who always had quiet birthdays? Good for her. High school classmate Mike. Damn, Deborah, this is a glow up. But the best comments were from people who knew my family well enough to read between the lines. Mom's friend Patricia. Linda, I thought you said Deborah never wanted big celebrations. Dad's brother, Uncle Tom. Guess the family financial situation improved pretty quickly. Cousin Rachel. Interesting how Deborah can afford Tokyo penthouse suits, but the family could never afford to throw her a decent birthday party. Thoughtful face emoji. That last one had 17 likes. Emma had also commented, some of us care more about family than Instagram likes. It had 3 likes, all from her closest friends. The comment that made me actually laugh out loud came from my coworker Jake. Deborah finally learned to celebrate herself the way she deserves, party popper emoji. I decided to respond to that one better late than never, smiley face emoji. My phone immediately started ringing. Mom. I let it go to voicemail and listened to the message. Deborah Elizabeth, you call me back right now. We are worried sick and your sister is beside herself. This is not like you, and we need to know what's going on. I poured myself more champagne and crafted my response carefully. I called Emma first. Where the hell are you? She answered on the first ring. Tokyo, I said simply. I can see that from your Instagram post that literally everyone is talking about. How could you just disappear without telling us? And how the hell are you staying in a penthouse I saved up? I said, you know the money I didn't spend on birthday parties? Silence. That's not funny. Deborah, it wasn't meant to be. Mom and Dad are freaking out. They thought something happened to you. I told them I was going to a spa retreat for my birthday weekend. A spa retreat is not the same as flying to Japan. True, I agreed. This is much better. You're being selfish, Emma said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. My party is in 2 weeks, and now everyone is asking about your trip instead of focusing on my celebration. And there it was. The real issue wasn't that they were worried about me. It was that I had dared to upstage Emma. I'm sorry my birthday is affecting your birthday. I said not sorry at all. That's not what I meant. Actually, Emma, I think that's exactly what you meant. Just like it's always been exactly what you meant. I hung up. Mom called 30 seconds later. Deborah, we need to talk. I'm listening. How could you just leave without telling us where you were really going? We were worried sick. I told you I was going away for my birthday weekend. You said a spa retreat. I said I was going to do something different for my birthday and that it would be good for me. Tokyo definitely qualifies. Deborah, this isn't like you. And that was the problem, wasn't it? The real Deborah, the one who wanted nice things and special celebrations and to feel valued, had never been allowed to exist. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think you do. I said, how did you pay for this? Are you in debt? Are you in some kind of trouble? I saved up, Mom. I work hard. I make good money. And I decided to spend it on myself for once. But this must have cost more than you've ever spent on my birthday. Yes, it did. Silence. Deborah. I have to go. Mom, I have dinner reservations. We need to talk about this when you get home. Do we? Because for 25 years, whenever I tried to talk about feeling left out or treated differently, you told me I was being dramatic or too sensitive. Now I'm not talking about it anymore. I'm just living my life. I hung up and immediately blocked both Emma and my parents on Instagram. I wasn't ready for that conversation to continue publicly, but I couldn't block everyone, and the comments kept coming. Cousin Rachel had posted again. Funny how Deborah suddenly had money for luxury trips when she's been working her ass off for years, while Emma got handed everything. Eyes emoji? Aunt Carol replied, Rachel Marie, that's not appropriate. But Uncle Tom replied to Aunt Carol, is it inappropriate or is it accurate? The family group chat, which I'd muted months ago, apparently exploded. Emma screenshotted some of the messages and sent them to me. Grandma, I always wondered why Deborah's birthdays were so different from Emma's. Aunt Carol Linda always said Deborah preferred low-key celebrations. Uncle Tom, did Deborah prefer them, or was that just easier? Cousin Rachel, I remember Deborah asking why Emma got parties and she didn't. Linda said it was because Deborah was more mature and didn't need them. Cousin Mike, that's up. Deborah's been working since she was 16 and Emma's never had a job. Grandma language Michael. Cousin Mike, sorry Grandma, but it's messed up. I realized that other people had been noticing the disparity all along. They just hadn't said anything because it wasn't their place. But my Tokyo post had given them permission to finally acknowledge what they'd all been seeing. The next morning in Tokyo, I woke up to 23 more missed calls and decided to post another photo. This one was my breakfast. Perfectly arranged Japanese delicacies on a tray with a Tokyo skyline in the background taken from my suite seating area. Caption day, 2 in paradise. Sometimes the best birthday gifts are the ones you give yourself. Cherry blossom emoji. Tokyo breakfast. Best birthday ever. Living my best life. The response was immediate. Emma called me crying. Deborah, please stop posting. Everyone is talking about this. Mom is getting calls from relatives asking questions about our family. What kind of questions about money and fairness? And just please stop. You're embarrassing us. I'm embarrassing you by celebrating my birthday. You're embarrassing us by making it obvious that things weren't always equal. Finally, some honesty. Things were never equal, Emma. Not once. Not ever. I know that now. Okay, I know. But did you have to make it so public? I posted 2 photos of my birthday trip. If that makes the inequality obvious, maybe the problem isn't the photos. Deborah, please, can we talk about this when you get home? Can we fix this? What exactly do you want to fix? The 26 years of treating me like an afterthought? Or the fact that people noticed? She was quiet for so long, I thought she'd hung up. I want to fix the 26 years, she finally whispered. I almost broke. Almost. But then I remembered every birthday dinner at Olive Garden while she got live bands. Every graduation dinner at chain restaurants while she got parties. Every time I was told I was too mature to need celebration while she got red carpets and photographers. I don't think you can, I said softly. Some things can't be fixed, Emma. They can only be learned from. I spent the rest of my trip doing exactly what I wanted to do. I visited museums and gardens, took cooking classes, went to the theater, and ate at restaurants I dreamed about for years. I bought myself beautiful things and took photos of everything. But I didn't post any more photos online until the very end of my trip. I had made my point and wanted to actually enjoy my vacation without managing the family drama. The trip was everything I'd hoped for and more. For 10 days, I was just Deborah. Not the overlooked daughter, not the responsible older sister, not the one who was supposed to understand why she deserved less. Just Deborah experiencing one of the world's great cities and finally celebrating herself the way she deserved. On my last night, I had dinner at the hotel's restaurant and reflected on the trip. I felt different, not bitter or angry anymore, just free. Free from the need to beg for attention or justify my worth. Free from the family dynamics that had defined me for so long. I flew home in first class again, and this time I didn't save the photos for later. I posted one picture of the first class lounge with the caption, "Heading home." Sometimes the best journeys are the ones you take alone. Airplane emoji. When I landed, there were only 3 messages waiting for me. One from my manager asking how my trip was, one from my friend Lisa saying the photos looked amazing, and one from Emma. "Can we talk when you're ready?" Really talk. I didn't respond immediately. I went home, unpacked, and tried to readjust to regular life. But everything felt different now. My apartment felt smaller, but more mine. My routine felt more intentional. I felt like I'd finally grown into myself. 3 days after I got back, Emma showed up at my door. She looked terrible, like she'd been crying for 2 weeks straight. "Can I come in?" I let her in and made tea while she sat at my kitchen table and cried. "I canceled my party," she said. Finally, I sat down across from her. "Why?" "Because after your Tokyo post, I started actually thinking about our birthdays growing up, really thinking about them. And I realized that I never once asked why yours were different. I just accepted that I deserve more." She wiped her eyes with a tissue. "Mom and Dad keep saying that you were always more mature, that you preferred low-key celebrations, that you never complained. But Deborah, you did complain. I remember you asking. I remember you crying after my 10th birthday party because you wanted friends to come to yours too. And I remember Mom and Dad telling you that you were being jealous and ungrateful." I nodded. I remembered that conversation too. I was 10 when they threw me that first big party. I just accepted that it was normal, that I deserved it. I never questioned why you didn't get the same thing. I was a kid, but I'm not a kid anymore. I haven't been a kid for a long time. "No," I agreed. "You haven't. Mom and Dad keep trying to explain it away. They say money was tighter some years, or that they thought you really did prefer smaller celebrations, or that they were trying to teach you different values. But Deborah, they threw me a $10,000 party last year. For my 21st birthday, there's no explanation for that, except that they value me more than they value you." Hearing her say it out loud was both painful and oddly relieving. "The thing is," I said carefully, "I don't think they set out to value you more. I think they just fell into a pattern when we were kids, and it became easier to keep justifying it than to admit they'd been unfair. But the result is the same. Yes, the result is the same." We sat in silence for a while. "I can't undo 26 years of birthday parties," Emma said finally. "No, you can't. But I can try to do better going forward. We all can." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. She wasn't the spoiled princess I'd built up in my mind anymore. She was just a young woman who had been handed advantages she'd never questioned and was now grappling with the reality of that privilege. "What does doing better look like?" I asked. "I don't know yet, but maybe it starts with acknowledging that the way things were wasn't fair. And maybe it continues with me not accepting expensive gifts and parties from them till they're ready to treat us equally." I raised an eyebrow. "You'd really give up the princess treatment, Emma? Seeing how happy you looked in those Tokyo photos, I realized I've never seen you look that happy at any family celebration ever." "How up is that?" "It was pretty up. I've been thinking," she continued, "about what it must have felt like to watch me get everything while you got leftovers. And I'm ashamed that I never thought about it before." "I'm not asking you to be ashamed." "No, but I should be. I should have noticed. I should have said something. I should have insisted that you get the same treatment I did, but I didn't because it was easier not to see it." I reached across the table and took her hand. "We were kids, Emma. You were younger than me. It wasn't your job to fix our parents' mistakes. Maybe not when we were kids, but I'm 24 now. I should have figured this out years ago." She squeezed my hand. "I want to have a relationship with you that isn't built on inequality. I want to get to know who you actually are when you're not trying to be the mature, understanding older sister who never asks for anything." "I'd like that too," I said, and I meant it. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. How long were you planning the Tokyo trip?" I smiled. "About a year and a half." "A year and a half of saving and planning while watching me plan another ridiculous party." "Pretty much. I would have been so angry. I would have exploded at some point. I was angry. I just channeled it differently into the most epic birthday celebration I've ever seen. I learned from the best, I said, grinning. She laughed despite her tears. Touché. We talked for another 2 hours, really talked maybe for the first time in our adult lives. She told me about the pressure she felt to be the perfect daughter, the guilt she carried about always being the favorite, and the fear that she'd never accomplish anything on her own merit. I told her about the loneliness of always being overlooked, the exhaustion of pretending not to care, and the liberation of finally putting myself first. When she left, we hugged. A real hug, not the obligatory family hug we perfected over the years. Deborah, yeah, I'm really glad you went to Tokyo. I'm glad you celebrated yourself the way you deserved, and I'm sorry it took your Instagram post for me to see what was right in front of me. I'm glad I went too. My parents took longer to come around. They called several times trying to get me to admit I'd been dramatic or attention-seeking. They suggested family therapy, which was rich considering they'd spent decades dismissing any suggestion that there was a problem. But Emma kept her word. When they tried to plan her 22nd birthday party, she told them she didn't want one unless they were prepared to throw me an equally elaborate 27th birthday party. But Deborah doesn't want big parties, Mom protested. Did you ask her? Emma replied. They hadn't, of course. So they asked me, I'd love a party, I said simply. I've always wanted a party. The conversation that followed was long and uncomfortable. There were tears, accusations, and a lot of defensive explanations about money and timing and what they thought I wanted. But eventually, slowly, they began to understand what they'd done. Not just the birthday parties, but the underlying message they'd sent for 26 years that Emma was worth celebrating, and I was not. My 27th birthday party was beautiful, nothing over the top. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Just a nice dinner with friends and family, good music, and a cake that wasn't from the grocery store bakery. Emma gave a toast about growing up and learning to see beyond your own experiences. My parents apologized publicly for not celebrating me properly before. It was everything I'd wanted when I was 8 years old. And somehow, that was enough. But honestly, the Tokyo trip was better because the Tokyo trip wasn't about them finally giving me what I deserved. It was about me finally giving myself what I deserved. It was about learning that I didn't need their permission to celebrate my own life, to spend money on my own happiness, to take up space in my own story. The Instagram post that started this whole thing has over 300 likes now, and dozens of comments from people sharing their own stories about family inequality and the importance of advocating for yourself. It apparently inspired my cousin Rachel to finally demand equal treatment from her parents and my coworker Jake to book his own solo trip to celebrate his promotion. Sometimes the best revenge isn't planned. Sometimes it's just living your best life so loudly that people can't help but notice the contrast with how you were treated before. And sometimes the best gift you can give yourself isn't just a luxury trip. It's the permission to finally be as important in your own life as you've always been in everyone else's. I'm planning my next adventure now. Maybe Iceland, maybe New Zealand, maybe both.